Hello, my name is John Tate, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Tamkeen, an Abu Dhabi company that delivers projects enriching the UAE's social, cultural, and educational landscape. Foremost amongst these projects is New York University Abu Dhabi, enabling its development as a center of excellence and community engagement. I'm delighted that you're able to join us for this 10th talk, which has been organized as part of NYUAD's 10th anniversary celebrations. Today's talk, Innovation Nation, Entrepreneurship in the UAE, is focused on those creating the entrepreneurial opportunities. And in that regard, I'm delighted to introduce our panel today. Nabil Al-Maskari is Executive Chairman of Al-Maskari Holding, a privately owned company with a diverse range of investments in the UAE and internationally. Nabil is also a fellow of the Aspen Institute's Middle East Leadership Initiative and actively supports high-impact entrepreneurs as Chairman of Endeavor UAE. Jida Itani, also on our panel today, COO of Hub 71, an Abu Dhabi-based accelerator which supports companies and contributes to Abu Dhabi's entrepreneurial development. Prior to her work with Hub 71, Jida spent a decade in a range of roles in marketing and business development in Abu Dhabi. Also delighted to welcome today Lubna Hadid, CEO and founder of Decenture. Decenture is an edtech company specializing in delivering AI, blockchain, and data analytics metrics to the education sector. And finally, Mohammed Balabi, who is an NYUAD alumnus, shout out for the home team, NYUAD, and tech entrepreneur. Mohammed graduated from NYUAD in 2016, and he's founded a number of cybersecurity businesses, including Halahi.com. He was named Young Entrepreneur of the Year by Arabian Business, and the youngest entrepreneur to have been featured on the cover of Forbes Middle East. Turning first to you, Nabil, your company, Al-Maskari Holdings, in many ways illustrates the journey Abu Dhabi has undertaken over its first 50 years. In the early stages, your family started in the commodity sector, I believe, but later expanded your investments into a wider range of areas. Can you tell us a little bit about this diversification, how it played out, and what you think are the parallels, if any, that you see with Abu Dhabi's own economic journey so far?
Firstly, thanks, John, for inviting me for this 10th talk. I don't know if it only took 10 times to get invited, but I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit. I'm very proud of the NYUAD community as well. I have the great privilege to, as an Aspen Fellow, see some of the great works done around the Abu Dhabi ideas. So thank you for inviting. To answer the question, I think our family's history is actually very one that is kind of linked to the evolution of Abu Dhabi's story. So when you ask a question of parallels towards diversification, in fact, I would say it's more of a fact that we reacted almost by playing the derivatives. So the leadership of Abu Dhabi as the emirate and more broadly as the UAE country began to evolve, looked to both public and private sectors to help us with that maturity curve. And in our family's instance, having served for many years in the public sector, my mother working with ADNOC, my father working with ADIA, it was clear that we had some insights on how that development journey would accelerate. And so what we did was essentially understand the direction leadership were taking, how we could as a family support those aspirations, and we very much followed in their stead. So to some instance, I would say that the diversification is just a natural evolution as an economy begins to grow. So the sectors that we added were very much ones that the community needed at the time. And we always challenge ourselves to try to understand that next horizon of where Abu Dhabi looks to go, and can we help them achieve that?
Very good. Thank you, Nabil. You play an active role in encouraging the entrepreneurial landscape through your own work with Endeavor. Can you tell us a little bit more about Endeavor and where you see the big opportunities over the next few years?
So Endeavor is a UAE chapter of a global organization. We are a scale-up, which essentially is there to provide entrepreneurs a pathway to increase their impact on their local ecosystems. And we derive that by looking at essentially two litmus. One, how much revenue can we help that entrepreneur grow? And in many ways, how many jobs are we helping them create? In terms of my time within the UAE chapter, I was first asked to serve as a board member and then later to chair the organization. It's been one where we have really engaged with stakeholders from across the UAE. Notably, Hub 71, which is with us here today, is one of our newest partner ecosystem, where we look at Abu Dhabi acting as essentially a pillar of entrepreneurship, very much so in terms of engaging with the community, providing the frameworks, both regulatory, the environment, which is of capital, talent attraction, and that's similar to Endeavor's aspirations. In our particular instance, where we have been able to look at the journey over more than 20 different ventures launched through the Endeavor ecosystem, I think that we probably are one of the few across the world that have the highest amount of outliers, which we define as essentially exceeding the upper bell curve of impact within the entire international landscape.
Very good. Thank you, Nabil. May I ask, Nabil, earlier this year, we were delighted at Tamkeen to see that Al Mascari Holding and Mubadala partnered to establish the Transition Investment Lab, a research initiative within NYUAD. Can you tell us a bit about the expectations for this lab, why its work will be so important, you think?
Sure. Well, the Transition Investment Lab, which was very much co-founded and co-launched, as you said, with Mubadala and New York University of Abu Dhabi, the intent was how can we, through our understanding of principles of ESG, apply those towards essentially the development goals that have been defined by the UNDP. And in many instances, international capital, when it looks to access both frontier and emerging markets, which many of the region of MIASA contribute towards, we have to understand that they require a level of transparency, governance, and certainly some of the very key differentiators that provide them the comfort to invest locally. So in particular, I think what's important for the investment lab as it examines the principles of ESG is how do you apply those frameworks towards the sustainable development goals? And in the instance of the UN, most people may not be fully aware, although there are 70 different principles outlined. Two of them in particular draw out towards entrepreneurship. So within 4.4, which is really talking about providing the education requirements, sort of the foundational skill set that enables employment and entrepreneurship. And then 8.3, which is also around creating the right sort of ecosystem for enabling that entrepreneurship, those drivers. So we look at it as absolutely critical. Capital is essentially the lifeblood of entrepreneurs, right? And in particular, when you look at these markets, it's not as easy to access both on equity and debt structures. So we feel that that's an important role for private families and public institutions to play.
Thanks, Nabil. We're going to come back on a few of those themes. So please stay with us. But I want to turn now to Jida Hitani, COO of Hub 71. Jida, a warm welcome. And I want to ask about your work at Hub 71. Those companies that you work with often at the very beginning of their journey. What do you think characterizes the startup ecology in Abu Dhabi? Why is it different? Why is it special?
Thank you, John. Thank you. And thank you to my fellow panelists for being on this call today. We also, as a key government initiative that is trying to diversify the economy for Abu Dhabi and activating innovation and entrepreneurship, are also very proud of the NYU Abu Dhabi institution that acts as a pillar to our access to talent value proposition when it comes to Hub 71. To answer your question, John, I mean, there's different ways that we deal with startups, right? To Nabil's point, we're trying to bring together the key enablers as we drive the mandate of the government to activate a knowledge-based economy and to activate innovation across public and private sector, to enable and support founders to begin with, and their startups to come and set up in Abu Dhabi and grow. For us to do that, we obviously look at the macroeconomic factors that can help a startup to set up in Abu Dhabi. So we do rely a lot on partnerships with the government, partnerships with the private sector, family offices, and other funding institutions to create an enabling environment for them to thrive. The second thing is to obviously provide them a very favorable business environment to operate. So partnering with the right regulators and institutions so that they can tap into the existing infrastructure of Abu Dhabi. I mean, if we look at the investment landscape for the first half of this year, there's been quite a bit of funding that was invested into startups regionally, and it was quite a bit of an increase from last year, despite COVID and despite economic slowdown, to which a big chunk of it was driven by the UAE. So that kind of sends the right message to the market that the UAE is now ripe for startups. Abu Dhabi, particularly with all of the different initiatives that are being launched by the government, particularly the products that Hub 71 is helped spearheading and driving to support startup at their various life cycle, is at the right time and at the right place.
Thank you. We can see, I mean, I've said earlier how the UAE is ranked first in the Global Innovation Index of the Arab world, and it's done a lot of the things right that attract businesses here, and Hub 71 is doing a lot of those things. But we can also see, and I'll come to others on this question as well, regionally, things are hotting up. Competition is getting more fierce for entrepreneurial talent. And to host that talent is seen as a great prize in many different countries nearby. Though the UAE's efforts have been successful to date, what more and different do you think that we need to do to stay ahead of the curve, to stay attractive, in your view?
I mean, for us, John, we have a culture of partnership that cuts across everything that we do. And when we look at competition, we look at opportunities that creates for us to partner with other neighboring cities or other ecosystems that we have that could potentially fill a gap that we have, and that we could also add value to whatever they are proposing. To go back to your talent question, I think talent is scarce across the globe. Today, if you go ask any entrepreneur, the number one thing that they struggle with is finding the right team to kind of grow their business and to scale. For us at Hub 71, what we tend to do is obviously large institutions that have built credibility and have a large pool of talent that we can partner with is at the key priority of what we try to strive, NYU being one of them and other academic institutions across the globe. But also it's about kind of creating that exchange programs between us and global partners that have graduated a lot of those talent, especially in engineering and STEM related fields, and try to fill a gap that we have today and try to bring Abu Dhabi's story on a global map in that sense. So creating that synergy with other global institutions is quite key to our strategy, and we try to do that in everything that we do.
Thank you, Gina. I want to turn now to Lubna. A warm welcome, Lubna. You've been active on the social and commercial entrepreneurship front in the region and the UAE. And I'm really interested to hear you've been working with Mubadala on an elite STEM program for young people. Great if you can tell us a bit more about that, and also your intriguing journey to the West Coast, I believe, with a very talented group of young Emirati scholars.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me today as part of this 10th anniversary talk, and thanks to my fellow panelists as well for their insight. I'll start with the journey of the young Emirati aerospace engineering students from Khalifa University. We sponsored a STEM program that involved building rockets in the Mojave Desert. As a matter of fact,
like you do,
like you would do. As a matter of fact, that journey started, surprise, surprise, at NYU Abu Dhabi. As a discussion with the head of the engineering design lab, Matt Carrow. And we offered to sponsor students from other universities to sort of be part of that STEM program, as we do promote a lot of these activities, whether it's here or, as you know, in Europe and the United States. So we did end up by taking them to Los Angeles. They took part into a 15 days training program, level 1 and 2, to launch a rocket into space. Well, it went up 20,000 meters, and very much in the spirit of NYU Abu Dhabi, very inclusive, very intercultural, and ended up getting quite a bit of good press here in the UAE, but funny enough also in Sultanate, in Oman, neighboring Oman, and in Saudi Arabia. And that's part of what Gita was just saying moments ago. Something that started here in Abu Dhabi ends up essentially getting focus and echo as well in the neighboring countries. So that's part of the a program, that STEM program. As a consequence, we are most probably going to end up launching a much more robust program next year. We are currently in talks with the Ministry of Education, but as opposed to bringing Emirati students to the US or to the UK, we will most probably end up doing it here locally in order to scale. So that's for that Mojave adventure. For the STEM program, as you know, we're an edtech company, and we build software, AI focused or blockchain to serve the educational sector. But in parallel, we do sponsor and we do support a lot of these STEM events. And so we found great partnership support in Mubadala and also in ADDEC. And we are in the process of launching as a matter of fact, fourth industrial revolution based challenge for elite young Emirati students based sort of in the Abu Dhabi Emirate to start with, an age between 13 and 16. And that's going to be going on for 3 months, for 5 years running, hopefully. So that's in a nutshell what we've been up to at the moment.
Fantastic. From blockchain to rocketry and a lot else in between. Very impressive. Just picking up on the 4IR theme and actually, the more commercial side of the opportunities you're pursuing. I mean, 4IR in all of its various guises is very important to Abu Dhabi. What most excites Decenture, though, in terms of taking those 4IR themes forward here? What opportunities do you think that you're best able to capture being in the UAE, given our interests here?
Thanks a lot for this question. I think it's worth mentioning, doing a little bit of a detour and mentioning some of the principles of the fourth industrial revolution, right? So firstly, the intercommunication. So the machines and the devices and the sensors and the people, the humans that communicate with each other. The second aspect is the transparency within that intercommunication. The third aspect is the technical assistance, whereby machines basically are helping us making decisions. And lastly, the most important and what excites me most, to answer your question, is that decentralized decisions. So the ability of cyber systems essentially to make those decisions. So for me, as I can see right now, there is a sort of a paradigm shift in policy making with regards to the standards of these new basically systems. And I'm immensely excited and privileged to be, frankly, at the forefront of the discussion of the standards around blockchain at the service of the educational sector. So it started in the United States, and I've been a keynote speaker at many conferences on that front. And I'm really, really glad that this conversation is now brought over here. I think that Abu Dhabi and the UAE general has a huge role to play, being at the heart of GCC attracting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of expats that work here, but also producing tech-savvy talent. So for me, to paraphrase, others, it's a team sport. We are currently talking to the right actors here in Abu Dhabi, in government and others, to hopefully, as we pilot this scheme that I was mentioning earlier, that we can put at the same time sort of the test what might end up becoming the future standards around blockchain in the educational space. I'm talking about, and I know that we've had these discussions also, Gida, last year around equalization of certifications. All sorts of aspects that are quite exciting. So that's one of the advantages of my job, so to speak, being able to literally be at the pioneering stage. Everything is to be done in terms of blockchain in this space. We talk a lot about cryptocurrency, but not so much about the framework upon which this technology is based, and everything is to be done. And GCC and Abu Dhabi can play a leading role. So I'm really, really excited at the fact that government is giving us right now a platform, irrespective of the size that we have.
Thank you, Luba. And just before bringing in Mohammed, I wanted to loop back to Jidda on that question of prioritization within the 4IR landscape. There is so much. As you see the technology-based opportunities and the businesses around them, from Hub 71 How do you sort of focus and choose and prioritize, Gina? There is so much to look at in this space. Are you just looking at the interests of those incoming, or are you applying a proactive strategy to go and find the tech companies in the spaces that you want them?
Yeah. So that's a very good question, John. And as we're trying to build a global tech ecosystem from Abu Dhabi, we're trying to also align pretty much with a lot of different players, predominantly also on the national sector of priorities, as Nabil mentioned before. We started off back in 2019 with being very sector agnostic because we were nascent and we wanted to see what demand do we get and what is the demand from the market and what supply of startups do we get as a result of that. But now slowly we see a specialization into where are those startups coming from, what sectors, and at what stage they're at. And once we've realized all of these three key verticals and pillars, we're trying to match them with the market, with the funding, etc. So, I mean, naturally, because of, I think, how COVID accelerated a lot of certain technologies to be embedded both into the private and public sector, we've seen a surge in health tech companies, a surge in education tech companies, and AI, which is cutting across a lot of various different sectors. And I think because of the strong regulator that we have around ADGM, we do have a very strong presence of fintech companies that are trying to disrupt the financial institution market. Obviously, again, we are sector agnostic and we do open the door for various startups from multiple sectors to join us. And we offer a lot of different products that service their needs, but we're trying to see a little bit of those focus areas more and more as we expand our outreach.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. And I also wanted to come back to Nabil, one of the questions that I put to Gina regarding the ferocity of competition for talent heating up locally and the head start that the UAE's had, with the openness of policy and approach, and for all the success of Dubai and now Abu Dhabi in attracting entrepreneurs. That's just getting more difficult. How do you see the UAE staying ahead in that game?
So I think from a talent perspective, it's to some extent people would claim it's a zero-sum game, right? And I would counter that by suggesting that the more that we invest, and this goes back to the mission of an NYUAD or the broader education ecosystem, the more foundational support we provide, not only from the UAE but abroad, the more talent there is that's available, right? So the more that we can encourage and engage more broadly, even outside of the GCC, to invest in education systems, invest in the right kind of even vocational programs, whether it be around 4-hour or other pieces, I think we'll have a much better chance to succeed when it comes to attracting that talent. But let me just speak to the fact that we are not a homogeneous market. The GCC, obviously, we have a lot of competition. You hear about financial and tech innovation centers opening up throughout the region. I think the UAE, and in Abu Dhabi in particular, has very specific symbiosis with the private sector, right? And I think it's through the government's leadership that it's suggested that the privatization wave, which has a lot to do with the policy effect of things like the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, entities like Hub 71, the fact that entities of education like NYUAD has Start AD, it's literally cutting across the entire layer. And talent will self-select, right? The more that we build it, they will come, right? And I think it's all about creating a critical mass of a holistic approach to talent. And in my mind, I think that the epicenter of that is a long-term relationship to both the emirate and to the country. As you look at the policy now, potentially with golden visas, citizenship, we want people to both be attracted into the environment, but to remain here. And it's actually, and I'll use a bit of our Endeavor entrepreneur, Kareem, as an example. There's a Kareem cohort that after they were acquired by Uber, that many of the executives within Kareem actually spun out and created their own ventures. So what you want to do is create essentially a propagating ecosystem that continues to flourish because it plants new seedlings, right? And we have to water them, we have to provide the shade for them to grow. But I think that's why the panel that you have assembled here today is a good encompassing umbrella of the different stakeholders that are committed to the success of entrepreneurship in the emirate and the country.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Speaking to that new and establishing system of entrepreneurship and knowledge, we have a product of that system in the form of Mohammed Balabi. We're very pleased to be joined by an alumnus of NYUAD, Mohammed, you graduated in 2016, but you've already established yourself, I think it's fair to say, as a rising star and now probably a leading light in the cybersecurity space in the region. Just if you could reflect first, if you might indulge us, given we're all about the 10th anniversary of NYUAD, how did your time at the university, affect and enhance your entrepreneurial career and your start in business?
Well, first, thanks for having me over, John. It's always an honor and privilege to be part of the various NYUAD initiatives, all the way from being part of Start AD, programs to the Ideas Abu Dhabi. So that bond with the university lasts way beyond the graduation, and I hope in 50 years' time, when we have the 50-year anniversary, I'll still be, privileged and honored to join at that time as well. But definitely, NYUAD has been quite instrumental in my entrepreneurial journey. If anything, I credited most of my entrepreneurial journey to it. And I'll give you a very clear example on how that's unfolded. In fact, the first entrepreneurship event or conference or program I ever attended was in my first year of university at NYU Abu Dhabi. And that was I remember clearly, the Clinton Global Initiative, when I decided to apply, thanks mostly to our professors encouraging us to look into these opportunities to grow our interest in the field of entrepreneurship. And I remember when being selected and not being able at that time to afford the cost of flight to attend the conference in St. Louis, I went to one of my professors, and he guided me to one of the departments at NYUAD, who decided to cover my flight and stay in St. Louis so I can attend that conference. And that was when me and alongside like 5 other people at the conference managed to win an award and a grant from the Clinton Global Foundation. So that was one of the early seeds of my interest and passion for entrepreneurship, especially given that my background is finance. So at that time, I was studying finance. I was not remotely interested in technology, but these various events grew my interest in it. In fact, it was also at NYU Abu Dhabi, I remember, with the encouragement of my then professor Ramesh, the head of engineering, that we attended the Siemens technology competition, and we managed to win that competition, and we filed for my first patent. So again, that was another encouragement or a testament to how that entrepreneurial journey was really, really a good fit, especially in the technology space. And lastly, it was funny enough that at a conference at NYU Abu Dhabi, the programming conference at that time for the Arab world with Professor Sana, that I met a Moroccan hacker that was attending. And when he spoke to me about his journey, about his ethical hacking, what they were doing for companies like Facebook and Google and so on, well, I thought that an amazing skill like that could be very well applied to the ecosystem in the UAE. I mean, if you're able to hack into Facebook and get rewarded for that and help them fix the issue, why not try it with Kareem or Soup.com? And that was literally the idea that I had at that time. And I decided, hey, man, listen, we're getting together. We're starting a cybersecurity company. And the first company I remember we looked into was Soup.com, and that ended up being our first client. So it was all pretty much like an interconnected journey that pushed me slowly into this cybersecurity venture. And I'm not sure if you remember, John, but back in 2016, as I was about to graduate, I requested a meeting with you, and I ended up meeting you to tell you more about my interest in starting that cybersecurity company. You gave me very wonderful insights and guidance, which I still cherish and apply to this day. So you can see that the entire ecosystem, from the people, the resources put at our disposal, as well as the encouragement from our professors to have that multifaceted approach to education, not only sticking to finance or engineering, but still, like taking art courses and taking innovation courses and attending entrepreneurship conferences. All of that fed into helping me build what I built today. It did bear its fruits. We launched the company, we raised funds, we ended up on the cover of Forbes. I launched my second cybersecurity company a year and a half ago again. So you can see that this ecosystem is very much helpful in building the entrepreneurial mindset and also helping retain us. Because today, while we are a UAE-based company, we service clients across the world. Our clients span from all the way from the US to Morocco to KSA and to other places. And not only that, the innovation that's spun here in the UAE is not only relevant for the region, because, for example, recently we launched a new cybersecurity platform that we've developed. And today that platform is used by a NASDAQ-listed company in the US, as well as a giant defense contractor, which is the Thales French group. So you can see that building an entrepreneurial ecosystem is not only going to serve the UAE internally, but also will serve as a hub to help the world in general.
Thank you, Mohammed. That beautiful story of the journey out of NYUAD is very well described for us all. I really appreciate that. I mean, just reflecting on that journey, and I'll leave NYUAD in a second, I promise, because I want to get onto the business side of your activities. But just the advice you would have to NYUAD students, who were in your position back in 2016, just beginning their journey now, COVID hopefully beginning to be in the rearview mirror, looking around a hugely more dynamic region than it was even a few years ago. Any advice you would give to your former self as you set off on the journey?
The first thing would be to be open to any field. Like sometimes when we start and we are just focused on whatever academic pursuit we have. I started as an engineer. I thought engineering was my calling, and I took courses in engineering. But then, thanks to exploring other courses and fields, I realized that my passion was lying elsewhere. My passion was in finance. My passion was in tech. So it's always good to try and explore multiple options, especially when you're that early in your journey and when you're still a raw, I'd say, rock. It's good to polish yourself to be multifaceted, and I think that's helped me a lot. Given that when you're on the entrepreneurship field, you're wearing many hats. You're wearing the finance hat, you're wearing the marketing hat, you're wearing the product hat. So I think that kind of multifaceted education in NYU Abu Dhabi is an asset that needs to be leveraged fully. And the second thing is a lot of students are not well aware of it, but there are plenty of resources available to students willing to pursue entrepreneurial careers, all the way from the Start AD programs to the prototyping lab, which I spent multiple hours, using. To funding to attend conferences or funding to build the products prototype. All of these resources are there and need to be used. Otherwise, we're not really leveraging the full experience of NYU Abu Dhabi, because it's not just a university, as you said. It's a university with an entire ecosystem that is geared towards helping the students achieve and succeed at the same time. And finally, don't be deterred by a lack of technical knowledge, because this is what I come across a lot when I meet my friends from NYU or even current students. And that is, listen, I don't know how to code. There is no chance for me to start a startup. And that's not really the case. I have zero coding background, zero programming background. If anything, programming to me sounds like Chinese or looks like Chinese. But it's always good to take that first step, because you can always assemble a team. And NYU is full of team members that can make the essence of whatever project or idea you want to start. When I was in NYU Abu Dhabi, I looked for a designer who happened to be my roommate. I looked for a programmer who happened to be, in my class. So because we have such a diverse pool of talents, it's good to use it at that time and build an initial team with your friends, which you know already. So that makes it easier to get along. And, launch homegrown products or projects from the campus without even waiting to graduate. You can even start while on campus. And that's something I did. And I'm sure everyone else can.
Thanks, Mohammed. Thank you. Just changing subject more or less entirely towards the cybersecurity sector itself. I mean, it's a hugely interesting, growing, intriguing sometimes sector. I mean, I just want to ask, as someone who's begun in that sector, has done very well so far, how do you see its future in the Middle East and in the UAE? I mean, can we hold on to that vibrant, homegrown sector, or will the sort of sheer scale and cost of these new technologies that are being applied automatically favor the big global players and see a round of buyouts and sort of homogenization where we don't have as much homegrown emphasis?
I'd say this panel is a great example. If I can start a cybersecurity company and have a U.S. public companies using my technology, or French defense contractors using my technology, that means that we are just as good and just as talented as any other engineer in the U.S. or elsewhere, and can definitely create innovation that can still be relevant to the global market. In fact, the fact that we are in the Middle East with all its complexities, there is a huge wave of digital transformation sweeping across the region. A lot of key critical infrastructure that's constantly targeted. In fact, the region is one of the most targeted in the world by cyber attacks. The geopolitical context as well. All of these are very favorable, I'd say, conditions to give rise to homegrown cybersecurity companies. We've seen that happening. I know, for example, for a fact of many cybersecurity companies that are coming out of Abu Dhabi, of Dubai, of Saudi Arabia. And I think it's just a matter of will from local players to give a chance to these cybersecurity companies. Because sometimes since it's a very critical, I'd say, area, sensitive information is being used or disclosed, a lot of companies would favor a well-established, player from outside. But even smaller companies can have a shot. And in fact, if you give them a shot, you'll be very surprised by how well they do. And I'll give you an anecdote that I still like to recount every day, is that I was in a conference that was organized by WAMDA in Dubai. And part of the conference attendees, and one of the speakers was Magnus, the co-founder of Kareem. So Magnus, in his speech, mentioned cybersecurity as being one of the concerns that Kareem had as they were scaling up and growing. So I approached him after the end of the conference and told him, listen, Magnus, I just started a cybersecurity company. I know you deal with, like foreign contractors. If you can give me a shot, I'll do for free. Just give me a shot and I'll do the work for free. And if you love our work, then give us a contract. He said, well, why not? And then he gave us a shot. We did, like, I remember, security audits of the platform. He was amazed by our findings. And that's how we got Kareem as a client. So it's just a matter of letting people have a foot in the door and judging them based on their work, not on complex procurement standards. Like, you need to be operating for 5 years. You need to have an office with like 100 staff, and you need to have 25,000 clients before you're able to even bid for a contract. That should, I think, change, and I think it's changing.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much. Before I leave you all, I do want to ask the question of every panelist as to what advice they would give a student leaving NYUAD now, about to embark on an entrepreneurial journey. I haven't given you fair warning, so apologies. But just if I can start with you, Jidda, from Hub 71. I know you welcome collaboration with NYUAD, but thinking of those students who might be trying to do what Mohammed did so successfully, any advice?
The advice that I would give students today, John, is pretty simple. Look around you. I think today you are in an emirate and in a city that is embracing entrepreneurship and innovation, and there's a lot that's being presented for you to succeed and to thrive and to take that leap of faith. So be bold, follow your dream and follow your idea, and talk to the right people, ask the right questions, and get your foot in the door, as Mohammed said.
Well put. Thanks, Jidda. And Nabil.
So I would say very much harness your alumni network, right? Maintain a relationship back to the university, maintain a relationship back to your fellow students. You'd be surprised where that journey may take you. And, relationships and trust, those are some of the elements, whether you're pursuing entrepreneurship, other elements of business. I think that is probably one of the most important assets you'll take in addition to your education. So, remember your fellow colleagues, and I hope very much so that you remember also the experience that you have from Abu Dhabi, because no matter where you go in the world, I think you'll have a foundation and root here.
Wise words. Well said. Thank you, Nabil. Lubna.
I think, I'll add on to this, persevere, think outside the box, definitely be bold, be brave. And frankly, the sky is the limit. There's one aspect perhaps is to not be scared of failing. And if that happens, just, stand back up and try again.
So I want to thank everyone for taking part today and giving their time. I'm sure everyone will agree we've just scratched the surface of most of these issues. There's a lot more to say. But one of the common themes has been the role that NYUAD has played in supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem and knowledge economy as it's burgeoning in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. If you found this discussion interesting, then I do hope you will listen to more of our 10th talks. They are wide-ranging, from science to the environment to global education and arts and everything in between, even including COVID-19, which I've tried not to mention so far, so apologies for that. But once again, thank you all, and thank you to our panel.